The research ship Starlight moved slowly through the dark space around planet Zarian 7. Inside the ship, alien scientists from 2 different worlds worked together on an important mission. Dr. Vexala was a tall Svetzel, thin creature with blue skin and fur arms. She came from the peaceful Zalani Republic. Her partner Dr. Kethrim was shorter with gray skin and big black eyes. He belonged to the Korath Federation. Both aliens were excited about their work. They had been studying the old ruins on Zarian 7 for 3 months now. The planet was empty of life. But long ago, someone had built amazing cities there. Now only broken stones and strange metal pieces remained. The scientists wanted to learn who had lived there and what happened to them. Dr. Vexala looked at her computer screen and smiled. "Kethrim, come see this," she said in her soft voice. "I found something very different today." Her friend floated over to her workstation. Korath people did not walk like the Zalani. Instead, they moved by floating. A few inches above the ground, "What did you discover?" he asked. "Deep in the main temple, there is a crystal structure. It is not like anything we have seen before. The metal around it is different too. It's much older than the rest of the ruins." Kethrim studied the images on her screen. The crystal was clear like glass, but seemed to glow with its own light. It was about the size of a person and had many flat sides that caught the light in strange ways. Around it, dark metal formed patterns that looked almost like writing. "This could be very important," Kethrim said. "Maybe it was used for their religion, or perhaps it stored information." Dr. Vexala packed her tools. "We should go down and study it right away. This crystal is as old as I think. It might tell us who built this civilization." The 2 scientists took a small shuttle down to the planet's surface. Zarian 7 was not a pleasant world. The air was thin and cold. Strange purple plants grew between the ruins, and the sky was always gray with thick clouds. But the aliens did not mind. They were used to working in difficult places. They walked through the broken streets of the ancient city. Tall buildings rose around them, but most had no roofs anymore. Time and weather had worn away the details, but Dr. Vexala could still see that the builders had been skilled. The stones fit together perfectly. Some walls still stood straight after thousands of years. The main temple was the largest building in the city. It sat on top of a hill in the center of the ruins. Dr. Vexala and Kethrim climbed the wide steps to reach the entrance. Inside, their lights showed them a huge, empty room. The crystal structure waited for them at the far end. "Amazing," whispered Kethrim as they walked closer. "It is even more beautiful than in the pictures." The crystal was indeed beautiful, but also mysterious. It seemed to pulse with soft light that grew brighter and dimmer in a steady rhythm. The metal around it was covered with symbols that neither scientist could read. Dr. Vexala set up her equipment carefully. She had tools that could study the crystal without touching it. "I will scan it first," she told her partner. "We must be very careful with something this old." She turned on her scanner and pointed it at the crystal. The machine made soft beeping sounds as it worked. Numbers and pictures appeared on its small screen. Dr. Vexala frowned as she read the results. "This is very strange," she said. "The crystal is not just old, it is ancient. But it is still working somehow. There is energy moving inside it." Kethrim looked worried. "Should we leave it alone? If it still has power after all this time, maybe it is dangerous." But Dr. Vexala was too curious to stop now. She had spent her whole life studying old civilizations. This crystal might answer questions that scientists had wondered about for years. "Just one more scan," she said. "I want to see how the energy moves." She changed the settings on her scanner and tried again. This time the machine made different sounds. The crystal began to glow brighter. The symbols on the metal around it started to shine with the same light. "Vexala, stop!" Kethrim called out. "Something is happening!" But it was too late. The crystal suddenly blazed with brilliant light. Energy poured out of it like water from a broken dam. The temple filled with a humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The 2 scientists covered their eyes and backed away. From the crystal, the energy did not hurt them, but it kept growing stronger. It spread beyond the crystal, beyond the temple, beyond the planet itself. Dr. Vexala's scanner was making warning sounds. but she could not hear them over the humming. High above the planet, the energy reached into space. It moved faster than light, spreading out in all directions like ripples on a pond. The scientists did not know it, but they had just activated something that had been sleeping for thousands of years, far away, in a different part of the galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his chair on the bridge of the New Frontier. His ship was exploring new star systems, looking for planets that humans might want to visit someday. It was quiet work, but Morrison enjoyed it. Space was full of wonders for those who knew how to look. The captain called Lieutenant Amy Clark. From her station, "I am getting a strange signal." Morrison turned to look at her. Amy was his communications officer, and she was very good at her job. If she said a signal was strange, then it was worth checking. "What kind of signal?" Amy frowned at her computer screen. "It is very strong, but the pattern is odd. The computer says it matches some of our old emergency codes, but that cannot be right." "Why not?" "Because the signal is coming from a star system that no human has ever visited. We are not supposed to have any ships or bases out there." Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. In all his years of space travel, he had learned to trust strange feelings like this one. The signal. Amy put the information on the main screen. Numbers and patterns filled the display, but Morrison could see what had worried his communications officer. Hidden in all the strange alien data was something that looked very familiar. It was an old Earth emergency beacon, the kind that colony ships used to carry. "How is this possible?" Morrison asked quietly. "I do not know, sir. But if there are humans out there, and they are in trouble..." Morrison did not need to hear the rest. Every human ship had a duty to help others of their kind, no matter where they were found. "Set course for that system," he ordered. "Maximum speed." "Yes, sir," replied his navigator, as the New Frontier changed direction and accelerated. Toward the unknown, Morrison stared at the signal on his screen. Something was very wrong about this situation, but he could not figure out what. All he knew was that humans might be in danger, and that was enough. Behind them, they left only empty space. Ahead of them waited a mystery that would change everything. They thought they knew about their place in the galaxy. The New Frontier dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zarian 7 system. Captain Jake Morrison expected to find a quiet star system with maybe 1 or 2 planets. What he saw instead made his blood turn cold. Dozens of massive warships filled. The space around the 7th planet were dark gray and covered with weapon ports. Energy blasts lit up the darkness as the alien ships bombarded the planet below. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers across the surface. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Amy Clark from her communications post. "What is happening down there?" Morrison gripped his chair arms tightly. "Battle stations. All hands to combat positions." The bridge came alive with activity. Warning lights flashed red and alarms sounded throughout the ship. Morrison had served in the human military for 20 years, but he had never seen a fleet this large, attacking a defenseless world. "Captain," called his tactical officer, "I count 37 enemy vessels. They appear to be bombing archaeological sites and civilian areas." Morrison watched the main screen as the alien warships continued their assault. These ships were built for war. Their hulls were thick and armored. Rows of plasma cannons fired down at the planet without stopping. Whatever was happening here, it was not a fair fight. "Any signs of the humans who sent that distress signal?" Morrison asked. Amy shook her head. "No human ship signatures, sir. But I am detecting life signs on the planet. Someone is still alive down there." Morrison made his decision quickly. The New Frontier was just one ship against an entire fleet, but he could not watch innocent people die. "Take us closer. Maybe we can help." His crew looked at him with worry. They all knew this was dangerous, but they trusted their captain. The ship moved toward the planet, trying to stay hidden behind the larger alien vessels. On the surface of Zarian 7, Cathram ran through the ruins as explosions shook the ground around them. The crystal they had activated was still glowing, but now its light seemed angry and violent. Energy blasts from the attacking ships had destroyed most of the ancient city. "This way," Vexala shouted to her friend. "The temple might protect us." They reached the main temple just as another explosion rocked the area. Part of the building's roof collapsed, trapping them inside with the mysterious crystal. Dust filled the air and made it hard to breathe. "Why are they attacking us?" Kethrim asked. His gray skin had turned pale with fear. "We are just scientists." "We have no weapons." Vexala tried to think clearly, despite her terror. "The crystal. When we activated it, we must have sent some kind of signal." "Maybe?" These warriors came to find it. Through the broken walls of the temple, they could see alien soldiers landing on the planet.
Ow.
These creatures were nothing like the peaceful Zalani, or Korath. They stood 8 feet tall and wore black armor. Their faces were hidden behind metal masks, but their movements showed pure aggression. The soldiers were Vorthok, though the scientists did not know this name yet. The Vorthok were known throughout this part of the galaxy as unstoppable conquerors. They enslaved entire civilizations and took whatever they wanted. No one had ever successfully fought them off. Above the planet, Captain Morrison watched the enemy landing craft descend toward the surface. His ship's sensors showed him life signs that were getting weaker by the minute. People were dying down there, and he was the only one who could help them. Lieutenant Commander Parker Morrison called to his Marine officer, "Prepare a rescue team. We are going down there." Ben Parker was a big man with calm eyes and steady hands. He had fought in many battles and never backed down from a fight. "How many Marines do you want me to take, sir?" "All of them. And take Sergeant Collins and his heavy weapons team, too." Parker nodded and left the bridge to gather his soldiers. Morrison knew he was asking his people to do something very dangerous, but it was the right thing to do. Chief Engineer Lisa Torres spoke up from her station. "Captain, those enemy ships have plasma weapons that can punch through our shields. If they notice us, then we better not let them notice us," Morrison replied. "Can you boost our defensive systems?" Lisa's fingers flew over her controls. She was a genius with ship systems and could make machines work in ways their builders never intended. "I can reroute power from non-essential systems. It might give us a few extra minutes." The New Frontier moved carefully through the enemy fleet. The alien warships were focused on bombing the planet and paid no attention to one small human vessel. Morrison's ship reached the upper atmosphere and began its descent toward the surface. On the ground, Ben Parker and his Marines prepared for battle. They wore combat armor that was lighter than what most species used, but much more flexible. Human soldiers were trained to move fast and strike hard. They did not rely on heavy armor to protect them. "Listen up," Parker told his team through their helmet radios. "We have civilians trapped in hostile territory. The enemy has superior numbers and firepower. This is going to be a tough one." Sergeant Mike Collins checked his heavy plasma rifle. "It's just another day at the office, sir." The other Marines laughed quietly. They were scared, but they were also excited. Humans were strange that way. Danger made them more alert, not less brave. The New Frontier landed in a clearing near the ruined city. Parker's team jumped out and immediately spread into combat formation. The Vorthok soldiers had not expected anyone to land behind their lines, so the area was lightly guarded. Parker led his Marines through the rubble toward the life signs his scanners detected. The ancient city was a maze of broken walls and collapsed buildings. Plasma burn scarred the stone where enemy weapons had struck. They reached the temple just as Vorthok soldiers were trying to break down the main door. The enemy warriors were using heavy tools to smash through the ancient stone. Inside, Parker could hear voices calling for help. "Take them down," Parker ordered quietly. The human Marines opened fire with weapons that sounded like thunder. The Vorthok soldiers spun around in surprise, but it was too late. Human military training emphasized speed and accuracy over brute force. The enemy warriors fell before they could raise their own weapons. Parker and his team blasted open the temple door and found Dr. Vexola and Kethrim huddled near the glowing crystal. The two aliens looked up in amazement at their rescuers. "Who are you?" Vexala asked in the common galactic language. "United Earth Marines," Parker replied in the same language. "We're here to get you out." The aliens had never seen creatures like these humans before. They moved with a confidence that seemed impossible given the situation. Their equipment was different too, built for function rather than appearance. "There are more of us," Catherine said. Other research teams scattered. Across the ruins, Parker spoke into his radio. "Captain, we found survivors." They say there are more people out there. Morrison's voice came back immediately. Get them all. We're not leaving anyone behind. As Parker's team prepared to expand their search, explosions began falling closer to the temple. The Vorthok fleet had noticed the human ship and was now targeting their landing zone. Time to move, Parker said. Stay close and do exactly what we tell you. The Marines formed a protective circle around the alien scientists and began moving toward their ship. Behind them, the ancient crystal continued to pulse with mysterious energy, calling out across the galaxy to anyone who might hear its signal. Lieutenant Commander Ben. Parker moved his Marines through the ruined city as plasma blasts exploded around them. Dr. Vexila and Kethrim stayed close behind the human soldiers, amazed by how calmly these strange beings moved through what should have been certain death. Contact ahead, whispered Sergeant Mike Collins into his radio. 6 Vorthok soldiers, 200 meters. Parker held up his hand, and his team stopped moving. The aliens watched as the humans seemed to talk to each other without making any sound. They used hand signals that moved faster than Vexala could. Follow. The Marines spread out and disappeared into the ruins. Within minutes, the sound of weapons fire echoed through the streets. It lasted only seconds, then everything went quiet again. Clear came Colin's voice over the radio. Dr. Vexila could not believe what she had just witnessed. 6 Vorthok warriors had been eliminated by creatures she had never heard of before today. The Vorthok were supposed to be unstoppable fighters who had conquered dozens of worlds. How did you do that so quickly? She asked Parker as they continued. Moving, Parker looked surprised by the question. Standard combat tactics. Nothing special. But it was special to the alien scientists. They had never seen anyone fight the Vorthok and win. Their own species preferred to run away or surrender when the Vorthok appeared. Fighting back seemed impossible. Above them, the battle in space was getting worse. Captain Morrison watched his tactical display as more Vorthok ships moved to surround his vessel. The new frontier was fast and well-armed for an exploration ship, but it was not built for major combat. Chief Torres Morrison called to his engineer, "How are our shields?" Holding Lisa Torres looked up from her console with sweat on her forehead. "Act good, Captain. I have rerouted everything I can, but those plasma cannons are strong. We can take maybe 10 more hits before the shields fail." Morrison nodded grimly. He had known this rescue mission would be dangerous, but his crew had never complained. Was the thing about humans that other species did not understand. When the situation got worse, humans got more determined, not less. "Any word from Parker?" Morrison asked. Amy Clark checked her communications board. He found the main group of survivors. 12 more scientists trapped in a research building. "But sir, I am detecting something else." "What? Multiple hyperspace? Signatures approaching the system. Something big is coming." Morrison felt his heart beat faster. The Vorthok were calling in reinforcements. His ship would not survive long enough to rescue anyone. But then Amy's face changed expression. "Captain, these signatures are not Vorthok. The computer is identifying them as human vessels." Morrison stared at her in disbelief. "It is impossible. No human fleet operates in this sector." "I know, sir. But the identification codes are definitely ours." Before Morrison could respond, space around Zarian 7 began to fill with new ships. But these were not the dark, aggressive vessels of the Vorthok fleet. These ships were larger, cleaner, and moved with a precision that spoke of advanced technology and skilled crews. The first ship to fully materialize was enormous. It was 3 times larger than the biggest Vorthok vessel and covered with weapon systems that looked more advanced than anything in the enemy fleet. On its hull, large letters spelled out USS Liberty. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of the Liberty and studied the tactical situation. Her 3rd Human Defense Fleet had responded to what they thought was a distress call from a lost human colony. Instead, they had found one of their exploration ships fighting for its life against an unknown alien fleet. "Communications," Sullivan ordered. "Contact the New Frontier immediately." A young officer worked quickly at his station. "Channel open, Admiral Captain Morrison. This is Admiral Sullivan. What is your status?" Morrison's voice came through clearly, despite the battle raging around his ship. "Admiral, we are conducting a rescue operation. There are alien civilians trapped on the planet below. Sullivan looked at her tactical officer. How many enemy vessels? 37 confirmed. Admiral, they appear to be some kind of military force attacking. Archaeological sites. Sullivan's expression hardened. She had spent her entire career fighting to protect innocent people. It did not matter to her that these civilians were aliens. All ships battle formation. Prepare to engage enemy fleet.
8.
The human warships moved into position with a speed and coordination that shocked the Vorthok commanders. These newcomers did not act like any species the Vorthok had fought before. Most civilizations tried to negotiate or retreat when faced with superior numbers. The humans were moving to attack. On the planet's surface, Parker's Marines had reached the research building where the remaining scientists were trapped. The structure was partially collapsed, but Parker could hear voices inside calling for help. We need to move fast, he told his team. Those explosions are getting closer. Dr. Vexala watched the humans work with tools she had never seen before. They cut through metal and stone as if it were paper. Their equipment seemed designed to work in the worst possible conditions. Sergeant Collins, Parker called, set up a defensive perimeter. I do not want any surprises while we extract these people. Collins positioned his Marines around the building with their weapons ready. Dr. Vexala noticed that the humans never seemed worried about being outnumbered or outgunned. They acted as if danger was normal for them. Inside the building, Parker found 12 more alien scientists from various species. They were hurt and scared, but alive. Among them was Dr. Dexara, an elderly Zelani who seemed to be their leader. Are you here to rescue us? Dexara asked hopefully. Yes, sir, Parker replied. But we need to move now. Can everyone walk? 2 of the scientists had broken bones, but Parker's medic quickly applied human medical devices that seemed to heal injuries much faster than normal. Within minutes, all the civilians were ready to travel as they prepared to leave the building. Explosions suddenly stopped falling from the sky. Parker looked up in confusion. The Vorthok bombardment had been constant for hours. Why had it stopped now? Through his radio, he heard Captain Morrison's excited voice. All teams, this is the captain. The cavalry has arrived. Admiral Sullivan's fleet is engaging the enemy. In space above them, the human warships had begun their attack. The Vorthok fleet found themselves facing an enemy unlike any they had encountered. Before, human ships moved in patterns that seemed to ignore basic physics. They performed maneuvers that should have torn their hulls apart. Commander Rick Davis led his fighter squadron against the Vorthok ships with an aggression that terrified the enemy pilots. Human fighters were smaller and faster than anything the Vorthok used. They struck like angry insects, darting in and out of the enemy formation too quickly to track. The Vorthok War Chief Grexstock watched his tactical display with growing alarm. His ships were taking heavy damage from weapons that seemed more powerful than their size suggested. These humans fought with a creativity and violence that made no sense. What kind of species are these? He asked his tactical officer. Unknown. War Chief. They appear to have evolved on a high-gravity world with dangerous predators. Their combat doctrines suggest they view warfare as entertainment. Grexstock had conquered 17 different civilizations, but he had never faced anything like this. The humans did not fight to survive. They fought because they enjoyed it. On the planet, Parker's team began moving toward their extraction point with all the rescued scientists. Dr. Vexala walked beside the human commander, still trying to understand. What she was seeing, your people, she said carefully. You are not like other species, are you? Parker looked at her with genuine confusion. What do you mean? You came here to help people you have never met. We're fighting an entire fleet to save us. Most species would consider this foolish. Parker thought about this for a moment. Maybe, but it is the right thing to do. Above them, the human fleet continued to tear apart the Vorthok forces with methodical precision. The aliens had accidentally summoned the most dangerous military force. In their part of the galaxy, now they were beginning to understand what humans meant when they talked about protecting their friends. The space battle around Zarian 7 had turned into something War Chief Grexstock had never seen before. His mighty Vorthok fleet was being destroyed by human ships that fought like wild animals. The humans did not follow any rules of civilized warfare. That he understood, Captain Tony Mitchell commanded the human destroyer, Relentless. And he was proving why his ship had earned its name. Instead of staying at a safe distance like most species would do, Mitchell flew his ship directly at a Vorthok cruiser 3 times his size. "Sir, we are on a collision course," his tactical officer warned. "I know," Mitchell replied with a grin. "Hold steady." The Vorthok cruiser fired all its weapons. But the human ship twisted and rolled through the plasma blasts like it was dancing. At the last second, Mitchell's ship fired its main guns at point-blank range, then spun away as the enemy vessel exploded. Dr. Vexila watched this battle from the ground through her scanner. She could not believe what she was seeing. "They are insane," she whispered to herself. "No sane species fights like this." Lieutenant Commander Ben Parker heard her and looked confused. "What do you mean?" It was a textbook ramming feint. "We learned that move in basic training." The alien scientist stared at him. These humans thought suicidal attacks were normal training exercises. What kind of world had they come from? Above them, Admiral Sullivan coordinated the battle from her flagship. She had studied the enemy fleet for 20 minutes and already understood their weaknesses. The Vorthok relied on heavy armor and powerful weapons, but they moved slowly and could not adapt quickly to new tactics. "All fighter squadrons begin strafing runs on their command ships," Sullivan ordered. "Focus on their communication arrays, Commander." Rick Davis led the first attack run in his fighter. The small human craft moved so fast that Vorthok gunners could barely track them. Davis's squadron swept through the enemy formation like a swarm of angry hornets, hitting targets and disappearing. Before return fire could reach them, "This is crazy," shouted one of the Vorthok pilots over his radio. "They fly like they want to die." But the humans were not trying to die. They were just willing to take risks that other species considered impossible. Their ships were built tough, enough to survive maneuvers that would tear apart more delicate vessels. On the Vorthok command ship, War Chief Grexstock tried to understand what was happening to his fleet. His tactical computer showed him ship after ship going dark as human forces overwhelmed them. But the numbers made no sense. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. "We outnumber them 2-1. His tactical officer looked terrified. "War Chief, they are not fighting like any species we have encountered. Seem to enjoy being in danger. Their ships perform maneuvers that should be impossible." Grexstock watched as another of his cruisers exploded under human fire. The attacking ship immediately turned to engage 2 more Vorthok vessels at the same time. Any rational commander would retreat after winning one fight. These humans looked for more enemies to attack down on the planet. Parker's Marines had successfully gathered all the alien survivors. Dr. Vexala counted 18 scientists from 4 different species, all rescued by 12 human soldiers. The odds should have made rescue impossible. But somehow these strange beings had made it look easy. Major Holly Peterson had arrived with reinforcements and was now leading an assault. On the main Vorthok ground base, her soldiers moved through terrain that would kill most aliens within minutes. The planet's gravity was too strong, the air was too thin, and the temperature was too cold for comfortable survival. "This environment does not bother you, Dr. Thexera?" asked one of the human soldiers. Corporal Dan Wright looked around at the hostile landscape and shrugged. "It is a little chilly, but not too bad. Should see Minnesota in winter." The aliens had no idea what Minnesota was, but they understood that these humans came from a world that was even more dangerous than this one. That explained why they seemed so comfortable with violence in extreme conditions. Lieutenant Commander Steve Brooks was coordinating the ground assault while also managing spacefighter support and orbital bombardment. Dr. Vexala watched him work and realized he was doing the jobs of at least 3 different officers at the same time. "How can you think about so many things at once?" she asked. Brooks looked up from his tactical display. "Just practice, I guess. In combat, you have to stay flexible." The alien scientist was beginning to understand that humans had evolved on a world so dangerous that multitasking under extreme stress was a survival skill. Their entire species had been shaped by constant threats that would terrify other civilizations. Captain Maria Gonzalez commanded the frigate Swift Justice, and she was living up to her ship's name. She had disabled 3 Vorthok destroyers by targeting their weapon systems instead of trying to destroy them completely. This allowed her to engage multiple enemies without wasting time on total destruction. "Captain," her weapons officer called out. "Enemy reinforcements are arriving." Gonzalez looked at her tactical screen and smiled. "Good, I was getting bored." Her crew laughed and prepared for the next wave of combat. This was another thing that confused other species about humans. They got more excited when fights became more difficult, not less. War Chief Grexstock received the report that his reinforcement fleet had arrived. Surely now his forces could overwhelm these strange humans. But when he looked at his tactical display, he saw something that made his blood run cold. The human admiral was not retreating or calling for help. Instead, she was repositioning her ships to attack the new arrivals. Her fleet was actually moving to engage a larger enemy force by choice. "This is impossible," Grexstock muttered. "No species fights harder when outnumbered." But humans did. They had learned on their deadly homeworld that running away from danger often meant death. Better to attack first and solve problems quickly. This made them incredibly effective warriors, but it also made them seem completely insane to more cautious species. Dr. Vexala was studying the crystal that had started this whole situation. The ancient beacon was still pulsing with energy, but now she understood what it was. Her scanner showed her the truth that changed everything. "Kethrim," she called to her colleague, "look at these readings. This crystal is not from the civilization that built this city." Her friend floated over to see her data. "What do you mean? The energy signature is completely different." "Yeah, the crystal is much older than the ruins around it. I think it crashed here thousands of years ago." As she studied the information more carefully, Dr. Vexala realized something amazing. The beacon was not alien technology at all. It was human. Somehow, a human colony ship had crashed on this planet long before any other species knew humans existed. "The signal we accidentally activated," she said slowly. "We were not calling unknown aliens for help. We were calling the original owners of this beacon home." Above them, the human fleet continued its devastating attack on the Vorthok forces. Admiral Sullivan's ships moved with the confidence of people protecting their own territory. In a way they were. The beacon had marked this world as a human site thousands of years ago. War Chief Grexstock finally understood that he had made a terrible mistake. His fleet had not just attacked random civilians. They had attacked a human archaeological site and threatened human allies. Now he faced the wrath of the most dangerous military force his species had ever encountered. "All ships," he ordered, "desperately begin retreat procedures." But Admiral Sullivan was not interested in letting them escape. Her fleet had come here to protect innocent people, and she intended to make sure this threat never returned. War Chief Grexstock's retreat order came too late. Admiral Sullivan had positioned her ships to block every escape route from the Zarian 7 system. The human fleet moved like a pack of hunters, surrounding their prey with deadly efficiency. "Orthok vessels. This is Admiral Sullivan of the Human Defense Fleet." Her voice carried across all communication channels. "You have attacked civilian scientists and threatened human territory. Surrender immediately or face destruction." Grexstock stared at his communication screen in disbelief. These humans were offering him a chance to surrender. In all his years of conquest, no species had ever been in a position to make such an offer. To the mighty Vorthok, his pride would not let him accept defeat so easily. All ships fight to the last. He commanded his fleet, but his captains were not as eager to die as their war chief. They had seen what human weapons could do. One by one, Vorthok ships began powering down their weapons and broadcasting surrender signals. Admiral Sullivan watched her tactical display as enemy vessels gave up the fight. She felt no joy in victory, only satisfaction that the threat to innocent lives had ended. All ships accept surrenders and secure prisoners. Medical teams stand by to treat wounded. On the planet below, Dr. Vexala watched the end of the battle. Through her scanner, the human fleet had completely destroyed or captured the Vorthok forces in less than 2 hours. She had studied military history for her entire career. She had never heard of such a quick and total victory. Lieutenant. Commander Ben Parker approached her as his Marines secured the area around the ancient temple. Dr. Vexala, Admiral Sullivan wants to speak with you about the beacon. The alien scientist looked nervous. She had accidentally activated a human device and caused this entire situation. Am I in trouble for what I did? Parker looked confused. Trouble. You discovered an important historical site and called for help when you were attacked. Why would that be trouble? Dr. Vexala realized again how different humans were from other species. Most civilizations would be angry about the accidental activation of their technology. These humans seemed grateful that their lost beacon had been found. Admiral Sullivan arrived on the planet's surface in her personal shuttle. She was a tall woman. With gray hair and calm eyes that seemed to see everything, Dr. Vexala had expected a military leader to be harsh and frightening. But Sullivan spoke gently. Dr. Vexala, I understand you were studying our beacon when the attack began. Can you tell me what you learned about it? The alien scientist shared her data with the Admiral. The beacon is very old, probably from one of your early colony ships. It crashed here thousands of years ago, long before this planet was settled by the civilization that built these ruins. Sullivan studied the information carefully. This explains why our computers recognized the emergency signal. The beacon was broadcasting our oldest distress codes. Commander Alex Turner, the fleet's intelligence officer, joined their conversation. Admiral, this discovery changes our understanding of early human expansion. We had no idea our ancestors had traveled this far from Earth. Sullivan nodded thoughtfully. Dr. Vexala, would you be willing to continue studying this site in cooperation with human archaeologists? This beacon represents an important part of our history. The alien scientist felt honored by the request. Of course, Admiral, and I must ask, what will happen to my people? We have learned things about humans that other species might find frightening. Admiral Sullivan looked surprised. Frightening? Why would knowledge be frightening? Dr. Vexara, the elderly Zalani leader, spoke up nervously. Admiral, your species fights with a violence that most civilizations cannot understand. You seem to enjoy battle and take risks that others would consider suicidal. Some might view humans as dangerous. Sullivan considered this carefully. Throughout the galaxy, humans had been expanding their territory through a combination of diplomacy, trade, and the threat of their overwhelming military power. Most species chose cooperation rather than test human resolve in battle. We do not fight because we enjoy violence, Sullivan explained. We fight because we believe in protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Today, that meant protecting you. Captain Frank Rodriguez, who commanded the heavy cruiser Defender, added his thoughts. In human space, we have many different species living and working together peacefully. We judge people by their actions, not their appearance or origin. Dr. Vexala felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had worried that humans might be conquerors, like the Vorthok. But these beings seemed to genuinely care about helping others. What happens now? Admiral Sullivan smiled. Now we establish formal diplomatic relations between humanity and your governments. We would like to be friends and allies, if you are willing. Chief Engineer Lisa Torres was working with alien technicians to repair the damaged research vessels. She found their technology fascinating, built with an elegance that human engineering often lacked. But she also noticed that alien systems were fragile compared to human equipment. Your ships are beautiful, she told Dr. Kethrim, but how do they survive in dangerous environments? The alien engineer looked confused. We avoid dangerous environments. Most species do not travel to worlds that could damage their vessels. Lisa realized this was another fundamental difference between humans and other species. Humans built their technology to work in the worst possible conditions because they had learned to expect disasters and emergencies. Captain Jake Morrison finally had a chance to speak with Admiral Sullivan about the strange signal that had brought him here. Admiral, I still do not understand how that beacon survived for thousands of years. Sullivan looked at the glowing crystal in the temple. Human engineering has always been built to last. Our ancestors designed their equipment to keep working no matter what happened to them. Dr. Vexala was documenting everything she had learned about humans for her report to the Zalani government. She had discovered a species that defied every rule of civilized behavior, yet somehow embodied the highest ideals of civilization. "Commander Turner," she asked, "how do I explain to my people that humans are both the most violent and most protective species we have ever encountered?" Turner thought about this question seriously. "Tell them that humans learned long ago that sometimes you have to fight to protect peace. We would rather be strong enough to prevent wars than too weak to stop them." As the human fleet prepared to establish a permanent presence in the system, word of the battle spread throughout the galaxy. Vorthok had been considered unstoppable, but humans had defeated them completely in a single engagement. Other aggressive species began reconsidering their expansion plans. If the Vorthok could not defeat these humans, then perhaps it was better to seek friendship rather than conquest. The galaxy suddenly became a more peaceful place, simply because everyone knew humans were watching. Dr. Vexala sent her final report to the Zalani public, along with complete recordings of the battle. Government would need time to process what they had learned, but she was confident they would choose alliance with humanity. The ancient beacon continued to pulse in the temple, but now it served a new purpose. Instead of calling for help, it had become a symbol of cooperation between species. The emergency signal that had summoned the Deathworlder fleet had opened a new chapter in galactic history. Admiral Sullivan left a small garrison on Zarian 7 to protect the archaeological site and serve as humanity's first diplomatic outpost in this region. The human ships departed for their next mission, but their reputation would remain forever. Dr. Vexala stood in the temple as the last. Human transport disappeared into hyperspace. She had learned that the most dangerous species in the galaxy was also the most trustworthy. Sometimes the best protectors were those who others feared to fight. The crystal beacon pulsed one final time, and settled into a steady glow that would guide ships safely to port for years to come. The emergency was over, but the friendship it had created would last forever.